Good morning, good morning,
morning.
good morning. Welcome to another episode of Compelling Conversations. We're here again to preach, to proclaim, to teach the gospel, even in pragmatic ways. Today we are doing our Valentine's Day session about a month late, but we were in the middle of something else, so we didn't get to it in the month of February. But we have a retreat coming up in the month of April. What are those dates, Carmen?
April 17th through the 19th.
April 17th through the 19th. And we just want to do a session today to kind of encourage those that may be in need of some retreating to connect with us on those dates. But I'm also we're very happy today to have with us my wife of 30 years, the wife of my youth, Carmen Joyner, with us today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. Yes, this is not something she likes to do, but we kind of dragged her in with us today to just kind of talk to you all today about marriage. We're going to talk about our relationship a little bit and talk a little bit from the word of the Lord and just kind of enjoy our time together over the next hour. Good?
Yes.
Right.
Excited about it.
So we're going to turn over to George, and George is going to be the leader of today's gathering, and we're going to trust ourselves with him today.
Well, I just have some very interesting questions for you all today.
Okay.
So how did you all meet?
Carmen?
Well, we've known each other all our lives, all my life. I think his mom said I was about 18 months old when our families met.
Yeah.
And so Lee and I grew up together.
Okay.
In church, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we grew up at Refuge Church in Albany, Maryland, where our fathers were elders at that ministry. It's still very interesting because, thinking back now, I still did not see back then us being married. We've been married for 30 years now. Mm-hmm. And so my earliest remembrance of her was when we were probably 10 or so.
Right.
Well, I guess I was about 10. She may have been a little younger. And so, but I never anticipated, what we see happening today. So it's not like God told us when we were 10 or 7 that we were going to be married. That was not, the way that's not the way that happened. Mm-hmm. And so, but we've been knowing each other just about all our lives.
Yes.
So what is it that drew you all together?
Carmen? Carmen, you get that one.
I don't know. Our youth, we were all part of the same youth group.
Okay.
And just kind of hung out together, and we became very good friends.
Okay.
And I guess we kind of connected from there.
Yeah, we were friends for a while before we dated, because we were back in those days, man. You kind of hung out in groups.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the isolation where you got a guy and a girl here, a guy and a girl there. We kind of all hung out together, and as many years of that, we just kind of locked arms.
What do you all enjoy most about being married?
That's an interesting question.
Lee?
I don't know. I'm not really sure what I enjoy most. I enjoy it all. Not that every day is, lovey-dovey, but there's joy in every single experience, whether you're talking about issues that are going on with the kids or paying bills or when everything's going well. And, I enjoy it all. All of it has been for our maturation. I tell you what, it's never been a dull moment in our home. It's never been a dull moment. There is always something going on, and even when it comes down just between the two of us, the way God designed human beings to be is that we're always evolving. And so the Lee that I am today is not the Lee that I was 30 years ago when we met, and the Carmen that is today is not the Carmen that I married 30 years ago. There's this evolution that kind of happens, and with that evolution comes new things to explore and to discover. And so when you ask me a question, what do I enjoy most about being married? And I guess it's just the evolution of it all. Thinking about, I married a little girl who's a grown woman now.
Amen.
You got something good to say about me?
I think if I think about what I enjoy most about us being married, it goes back to your previous questions, just the friendship, the knowing that good days, bad days, or whatever, indifferent. I always know that Lee is going to be there, and that I can rest assured in that, and I think that's what I enjoy most is I don't have to fear whether he's not going to be here or something so bad happens that he's going to walk out on me or he's just going to he's not going to be there. I think I enjoy that most, just knowing that he is always my friend. Good days, bad days, or indifferent. He is always my friend, always my support, always there for me, and I for him. I think that was one of the biggest things that drew us to each other.
Yeah.
That we knew that we were always there for one another, no matter what.
How important has that stability been in your marriage? I hear you talking about the security, the support. How important has that been for you all with one another?
It's been very important.
Yeah, I think it's a very important issue. When Carmen was talking, I was thinking about when many years ago we were going through a rocky patch, and there were some health issues going on. And I remember going to work that morning, and on Focus on the Family, there was a guy up there that was talking about a similar scenario. And he was saying that, in those kinds of situations where there are health challenges and fear kind of sets in the relationship, what a woman needs more than anything else is the security of knowing that no matter what, you're going to be there.
Amen.
And I remember, and I don't think we may have had Demetria. I'm not really sure. I can't remember who it was, but I remember listening to that on the way to work that day. And I was like, man, that may be what's going on in our marriage. And I went home that day and I told Carmen, I said, listen, no matter what, we're going to always be together. Good health, bad health, house in foreclosure or living in a mansion. No matter what, we're going to always be together. And I'm never going to leave you. And and that must have been the issue, because from that day forward, we never, even though that was a challenging period in our marriage, it seemed to bring some kind of peace or resolution to her. And I did not realize how significant that was until I heard that on Focus on the Family that day.
So was that a turning point in your marriage in terms of some of the challenges that you all were enduring together?
What would you say, Carmen?
That was probably one of the turning points.
One, yeah. That's what I was thinking. That's what because what was difficult for us was the first 7 years of that marriage.
Okay.
That was the difficult season. The first 7 years were like insane, because you have the mingling of souls. You have even though we were brought up in Christian households, though our fathers were elders in the same congregation, there were still different family lives. And so you bring those two dynamics together, and we thought it was just going to be like, all pleasantries, and but that's not how it went. She was still who she was,
Right.
and I was who I was, and so you bring that combination together, you're going to have the competing of ideas. You're going to have the competing ideas. She was raised a particular way. I was raised in a particular way. And we're still figuring all that stuff out. Once you bring children to that dynamic, it's figuring out how we're going to raise. So we're still figuring that out. But those first 7 years of our marriage were very, very difficult. Would you agree?
I do.
Okay.
I do agree.
Yeah.
I do. I agree that they were very difficult. One thing that we made a commitment was that we weren't going anywhere.
Right.
So we did during one period in our marriage, even though it was very, very difficult. I guess in our minds we thought not going anywhere meant as long as we were in the same house, and that I think that was good. As long as we stayed in the same house, we were together.
Right.
So for about 6 months, I lived upstairs and he lived downstairs, but we were committed that we weren't going anywhere.
Sure.
Stayed in the house.
And so we
Absolutely.
stayed, we stayed in the same house together. But I mean, I believe that we honored God with our commitment.
Amen.
And I believe in that God honored us, and we made it through it.
Amen.
Not by ourselves, but we made it through it through trusting and leaning on God, and trusting and leaning and the people of God that help us walk through different difficulties in our marriage.
Yeah, but we were determined to stay together. Even throughout all that madness, we were like, listen, we're not getting divorced. This is going to have to work, and we're just going to figure it out. And again, Carmen brought up a good point at the end, is that, we had so many older married couples in our congregation that did not abandon us. They could see the struggle. They knew that we were having some difficulties. And so I had the men in my ear and some of the women, and she had the women in her ear. And back in those days, man, they were trying to talk you back into reconciliation. When nobody was telling you to leave your husband. They prepared us for the difficulties associated with marriage, and did not give us a way out. And practically taught us how we can love one another and rediscover one another in a very healthy way. And so we thank God for having older married couples in our congregation at the time.
Amen.
And we also had the example of our parents.
Yeah.
Both of our parents married young, just like we did. They married young, but they stayed together.
Yeah.
So Lee's parents have been married 56 years, I think, the end of this month.
Yes, 57 in a month, I think.
And my parents just celebrated 51 years of marriage. And so, we had that example before us, as well as that it wasn't always easy for them, but they hung in there.
Yeah.
And so that was a blessing as well.
Amen.
Yeah, another thing was that, because of the way we were raised, like, for instance, you hear parents saying, or I hear preachers or teachers saying, the gospel saying that you should never argue in front of your children. Well, my parents completely ignored that. I don't know if your parents did or not, but my parents ignored that. So they argued in front of us. But they argued fair. They fought fair. And so what was the lesson in that for us? We knew that we could argue, that there can be the competing of ideas in our marriage, but that didn't mean you had to go to divorce court. We knew that the end of the world was not happening because we had a disagreement. Whereas some people, they didn't grow up in those environments where people could be free to express themselves, because if there's no arguing going on, there is somebody's soul is being crushed. Right. Someone's being crushed. Somebody's being dominated. We didn't grow up in those environments. And so we knew it was okay to dialogue, to conversate about difficult things, and even it be intense, but knowing that even in the midst of it being intense, we weren't going anywhere. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. Having been married for 30 years, what would you tell your younger selves about being married?
Wow. Carmen? Well, I tell you, if I had to do it again, I would do it exactly the way I did it. If I had to do it again, I was 23 years old, and I thought I was in love with this girl, this young lady, and I could not imagine life without her. And I didn't understand all the complexities of what it meant to be married. But I tell you what, if I had to do it again, I would do it all over again. And everything that I've discovered over the last 30 years, the lessons learned, the depth of our love, I wouldn't trade anything for it. I wouldn't trade. So I don't know what I would tell my younger self other than do exactly what I did. Okay. What would you say, Carmen?
I wouldn't. I don't know that I would do our marriage differently. I think there's some mistakes that we've made along the way that I would like a redo of to do better. But I guess in all of that has brought us to where we are today. So
yeah, so that's the challenge.
Yeah,
that's the challenge of that question. Is I think that every mistake that we made has made us and has made the relationship richer. And so to remove those mistakes, to me, would remove the depth of our relationship that we have today. So I don't know if I would do too many things differently than I did do, because that would insult the depth of our relationship.
So is that what you would tell your younger self?
Yeah, that would be. I think so. I think so. I'm going to think about it. I may come back to that again.
Yeah.
I had to come back to that. That's a good question.
So how has being believers helped you in your marriage?
Oh, that's a good question. Ladies first.
It's helped me to understand that this relationship, though when we walked into it, we felt like we were getting married just because we were in love. Mm-hmm. And so it was just about me and Lee. Mm-hmm. It was all about me and Lee. But being a believer has helped me to understand that it's not about me and Lee.
Right.
That Christ is the center of our marriage, and everything we do, it needs to be for His glory and for His honor. And it's just not about us. It's people are looking at us. God needs to get the glory out of everything that's going on in our marriage. Our children are at stake. Every people we come in contact with are at stake. They're watching us.
Yeah.
And how are we going to respond? How are we going to handle this? How are we going to, even in our arguments or our intense conversations?
Yeah.
How are people going to view that, and how is God going to get the glory out of that?
I think that's very interesting, the way Carmen just answered that question. I think it's essential for us as believers to know that it's not about us, that marriage is a reflection of what Christ is to the church. The church, at times, there's brokenness that exists within the context of the church. But still God's love prevails. I think that is true in the context of a marriage, and it's important that we represent that in our marriage, not just my love unconditionally for her, but also her love unconditionally for me, realizing that whatever issues we may have, we must resolve it in such a way that God be praised. Right. And so that moves us out of that selfishness when trouble hits, when you hit a trouble spot. We can't walk away because Christ never walked away from the church. So there's a command that's placed and a demand that's placed upon us that we're not living unto ourselves. Right. We're living to reflect the essence, the beauty, the wonder, the glory, and the wisdom of God through our relationship.
Amen. So we're really talking about being believers as in our marriages. Yeah. So is being a Christian enough? Is it enough to have a successful marriage?
Good question. I think that it's hard to answer that question, George. Okay. Because my thought would be no, it's not enough. All right, but theologically, I'm thinking, yes, it is enough. So there's tension in what you just asked me.
So for you all in your marriage, what role has being believers? How has that helped you? How has it enhanced your marriage?
Well, go ahead, Carl.
No, I think that is a difficult one, but because we know successful people that have been successful at marriage. Successfully married that are not Christians.
Right. True.
Maybe they've been raised properly, or they just morally good people.
Yeah.
That they've had successful marriages. Now I think the difference is I don't know, that scripture keeps coming back to me in the present. In your presence there's a fullness of joy. Having Christ present in your marriage makes a huge difference. There becomes the fullness of joy.
Right.
And so that therein is the difference.
Amen.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the success necessarily as the world would define it.
Excellent.
Yeah, so Carmen nailed it. You've been hanging around me too long. Because exactly what she just said is what I think. I think there's those who have not been brought into the kindness of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. There's a fullness that God intended marriage to bring to you that they would never be able to enter into. And so I think for us and for believers essentially all over the world, there is a depth that we can move into because we've been brought into his kindness. We know his purpose and what he's doing here in this relationship. We understand that dynamic. And so there's a joy that we are able to enter into that those outside him would never be able to see.
Absolutely.
Never be able to see. And so what happens in those relationships, sometimes if Christ is not in place, then over a period of time, those relationships turn into like brother and sister relationships, right? They're still together.
Sure.
Every time you see one, you see the other. But the romance, the beauty, the discovery that happens, all the things that God intended that marriage to become, they don't always enter into that. And I'm trying to be careful in how I communicate that. They don't always enter into that. But for the believer, we've been given the privilege and the opportunity, if we take advantage of it, to enter into God's joy and remain into that joy within the context of our marriage.
So you talk about sometimes marriages surviving or thriving.
Right.
Those marriages are not thriving. There's not a freshness. There's
Right.
not that freshness that only Jesus Christ can bring.
Yes. So that's the difference to me.
Sure. So having served in ministry for so long, during your marriage, you've been in ministry for most of your marriage in terms of serving and being leaders.
Yes.
How has that impacted your marriage?
Wow. Ladies first.
We have not always managed it well.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So as far as impacting we just haven't always managed it well.
Correct. We did not. Early on, we did not. We were taught to, we just did not. Our marriage became, it took a back seat to church work, ministry, those types of things. I think sometimes we equate ministry with going to church, or busyness. That's the proper way. Sometimes we equate ministry with busyness, and I think there were seasons in our lives we were way too busy. We should have been paying more attention to ourselves, but we were paying more attention to other things. Should have been paying more attention to the marriage. And what God called us to in terms of properly reflecting Him to the universe. And because we didn't pay the attention we should have paid, we didn't properly represent Christ to the masses.
And I think it goes to, early on we were taught that, it's God first, then your marriage, and then your children. And I mean, there's just like these steps that you take.
No, you got it wrong, baby. It's God first, then ministry, then family, and so forth and so on.
Right. But we've come to understand that as we seek Christ first, all other things will fall into place.
Right.
Amen.
And so and we understand that, there are seasons that God takes us through. And so one season, maybe that priority is your marriage, or one season, maybe that priority is your ministry, or one season, maybe you need to be focusing on your children or whatever, and understanding that God gave them all, He's entrusted them all
to us. Right.
We need to understand that as we seek Him first, He would give us He'll illuminate our path and show us what needs to happen at the proper time.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily those steps that we, sometimes we're taught as we're entering into marriage.
Right, and that was liberating to us. I think Carmen was the first one who had the revelation, who brought the revelation to me, and I was like, man, that's biblical. That God is our only priority. Not that He's our first priority. He's our only priority. And so God loves your marriage. He's for your marriage. He's for your children. He's for your ministry. He's for your job. He's for all those things which He's entrusted you with. And so if He's your only priority and you're leaning into Him, you're trusting Him, and you're listening to Him, as Carmen said, there will be seasons. I remember when I first became the pastor at Christ Church, I think for that first year, I never attended like Bible study or prayer meetings or anything. All I did for the most part was preach on Sunday, because we felt that our children needed us. We felt that we had a release from the sovereign God of the universe to invest that first year of our time with our children. And we did that. I explained it to the elders and the congregation, and they didn't have a problem with it, because they, we didn't want those scenarios where the pastor's kids are the worst kids in the church. And as I tell people many times, it's because they suffer from neglect. It's not a special demon running behind those kids. It's that they've been neglected. And so we felt it was important for us to invest that time the first year. And we felt that was the priority that God gave us. Now, because of that, there have been seasons where we've been able to invest more time in the church, and the children were understanding because we've given them their time. They couldn't throw that in our face, and they wouldn't throw that in our face because we've learned to lean into God, and He has established our path or our priorities, and it's been
He orders our steps.
He orders our steps. It's been liberating.
Amen. So, in terms of the weight of ministry and the impact that it's had in your marriage, what has that meant to you? Just knowing that there are individuals watching, knowing that you are in a place of influence. How has that impacted your marriage?
Yeah, Carmen.
That's not always easy, and that's not always something you like for people to be watching, because there's some days when you just you just want to scream, and so it's not always easy. I don't know.
Well, part of it is, and Carmen would agree with this. Part of it is that we have always tried to be who we are. We've never tried to be anything different or to put on a particular facade. Yeah, we've always been who we are. When I, being a pastor, then I didn't put on a pastor cloak and become this other than who I am on a regular basis. Just because I have this new cloak on, we've been who we are. And so that we've been kind of transparent. So I think to us, other people may have been challenged in seasons, but we weren't that challenged because we can only be who we are.
Sure.
And it's not to say take us or leave us. It's to say that, listen, we can't pander to everybody. Now, don't get me wrong. It is important how people perceive us because we glorify the Father.
Right.
Absolutely. That's very important. But that does not mean that now we have to put masks on and pretend and act as though we're something other than who we are or who God created us to be.
Yeah.
So how empowering has that been for you? I mean, you mentioned the word liberating a little earlier. How empowering is that then for you to remember that, we can be who we are? We don't have to be locked into, or is that liberating, or is it kind of challenging given the expectations others may have?
Well, to me, it's liberating, and hopefully it's liberating to Carmen, but it's liberating to me. Like for instance, when I became the lead pastor, it was important to me to communicate with Carmen about this whole first lady thing, because we've seen the dangers. Sure. Horrific stories within the context of local fellowships where this whole first lady thing takes on a position or a personality of its own and to become something that's very destructive within the context of a local fellowship. Now, some people may be offended by what I just said, but we've seen that before. And so it's important for us to have that conversation, for me to figure out where she was in that whole scenario. And she was just like I am. Listen, those we don't want to fall into any of those traps. And so that there, to me, Carmen's been able to be herself. Me, I've always been out in front of people. I've always been a communicator, or I was in the organ, or whatever it is. I've always been up front, but that has not been her narrative always. She loves to sing, she loves the mic, she likes that type of arena. But, to tell her she got to now preach and teach because every other pastor's wife is preaching and teaching, or that, give me something else. Got to wear a big hat on Sunday, or whatever it is. We've never fallen into those traps, and that has not been her heart. So, as my wife in the context of the local fellowship, and she is considered to be the first lady of the church, that means something different to us than what it means to some people. And so you want to further that conversation?
Well, I think on the same token, sometimes with that comes challenges because there are expectations. People do have expectations of you. And some of them realistic, I shouldn't say some of them realistic. Many expectations are realistic. So then the challenge comes with being who you are, but then being vulnerable enough or being teachable enough or being open enough.
Right. Very good.
To be willing to meet some of those expectations because they are realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Very good. Good answer.
Very good. Looking back on some of the expectations you had before you were married, how have your expectations changed, or expectations of marriage changed?
Wow.
In Ephesians 5:33 it says, "However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." Along the lines of the question, how have love and respect been a key part of your marriage?
Well, you want me to answer? That's a loaded question, George. Because, like, for instance, we got married young, and I don't think my parents thought I was ready for marriage yet. So they sent us to multiple marriage counselors. I think they kind of thought they were going to talk us out of it, but I don't think that worked. But I remember one of the last guys we went to go see was Pastor Bob Whitaker at Freedom Church, a wonderful man of God, great preacher, teacher of the Word. And Carmen and I, we sit down with him, and near the end of the session, he says, "Why you guys want to get married?" And we were like, "Because we love one another." And he looks at us and he says, "No, you don't." And we kind of startled. He said, "No, you guys haven't had enough life experience. You see me in a couple of years. In a couple of years, you're going to let me know." And I tell you what, I've lived to learn what he was talking about. Like for today, if you ask us about whether we love each other or not, yeah, because we've had so many shared experiences. We've been through some things.
Right.
We're in each other's souls. There's the mingling of souls that has happened. Right. But back then, we thought we knew, but we didn't have a clue what real love is, what it really meant. We saw the soap operas. We saw our parents, but we only saw, 10 years, into our parents' marriage, so many of the kinks had already been worked out. So we didn't see what we saw in our marriage. I never saw in my parents' marriage because I was too young to see those things. So when you talk about expectations, bro, my expectations for marriage, though I was told, were quite different than the reality in the first 7 years of our marriage. And then today, where we are in terms of our marriage is different than what I anticipated when I got married. When I got married, I didn't see myself in ministry. That wasn't my goal. It may have been my parents' goal, but that wasn't my goal. I was the keyboard player, the piano, the organist. My wife was the singer. So that was our comfortable. And we were happy with that. So that's kind of where we saw ourselves going. And so expectation-wise, man, I'm way outside anything I ever dreamed or imagined our marriage to be. This is a little different, but it's better than I imagined. Carmen.
So that love and honor and respect, I think that's something that the good thing about having all those counseling is we learned all of that, and a lot of that was exhibited throughout our lives. But I think we've grown in that. Some of that we had to. It didn't just come naturally, just because we got married.
Will it come naturally? Will it come naturally in marriage? I mean, I didn't want to get away from that.
No, it will not come naturally. I don't believe the love will just come naturally. I think it's a decision that you make. I think that love is a decision. I think that submission and that honor is a decision that you make.
Yeah. Like, for instance, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about that 6 months when Carmen lived upstairs and I lived in the basement. Now, this is how crazy it was. Every day, Carmen still fixed me dinner.
I was there.
Yeah, right. That's right. During that time, Carmen still prepared a meal for me, right?
Absolutely.
And so she didn't have to do that. So even when we were not getting along, that whole aspect of unconditional respect, she still wanted to make sure I was taken care of, even though we didn't agree on too many things. She made sure my clothes were washed. I mean, this woman took care of me during those 6 months. And it wasn't like I was just, upset with her, but she was upset with me as well. And so even in that anger, she still was, took care of me.
And he ate the food.
And I ate the food. Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
Trusting.
I should have bought a dog during that season. Give something to the dog. And if you survive, then I'll eat some of it.
Cupbearer. So we've talked a little bit about expectations. We've talked about love and respect and its importance in marriage. Can you share a little bit about the boundaries that you have created to protect your marriage? We talked about your involvement in ministry. We talked about how, in terms of your personality, that has stretched you some. What are some things that you've done or recommendations that you have with regard to protecting your marriage and setting boundaries?
So I think I would say just some of the simple things in life. Again, we're all humans. We're both humans.
Yeah.
And there are days when we're tired. There are days when we get frustrated or angry, or so we try to deal with one another according to knowledge. If Lee comes in and he's tired and he snaps at me or something like that, don't snap back. And don't snap back. Sometimes understand. You know what? He's preached today. He's tired. He's been pulled on all different kind of ways, and right now he doesn't need somebody else that's just gonna snap with him. Just needs somebody just gonna understand and just take the snap or whatever. And the same vice versa. If I were to do that, just the same thing. Just the simple things. Just understanding that we need each other.
Yeah. I think for me, I would go in a different direction. I remember a good church mother, Mother Key. One of the things she said to me was, whenever you go out to preach, always take your wife. Never go out to preach, never travel without your wife. That's been a boundary for me. If you see me, you're going to see my wife. I remember I was down Bible Way this wasn't even ministry related. I was down there taking pictures for a particular event. One of my buddies who I hadn't even seen in a while, he sees Carmen and he said, "Yeah, I knew when I saw you, he's going to be somewhere around here." They're used to seeing us together. And so that's one of the things, one of the boundaries, and that has to do with, protecting the relationship from outside forces.
Sure.
Even in the context of the way we run the church. I'm never going to have an assistant except for my wife. That as long as she can do it, that's who my assistant is going to be. I'm not going to have a separate secretary. None of that stuff is going to ever happen. She's going to always be that go-between me and whatever's going on. I don't care if it's the business aspect, administrative, whatever it is. My wife is always going to be that person that's going to be the closest to me. And so those are particular boundaries that, as long as she's willing to do it, and she's willing to do it, those are some of the boundaries I've established for myself to protect our marriage, to make sure that I don't even crack the door for any kind of improprieties to happen. The best way to keep from being vulnerable is don't put yourself in vulnerable scenarios. And that's been my mode of operation.
How important has that been to you?
It's
that he functions in that manner, or that he sees it that way?
I think it's very important, and also realizing that he values what God has placed in me.
Amen.
Yeah. And doesn't have to seek that elsewhere. He values what God has placed in me. And it's funny, as you were talking, I'm thinking that it's funny how God works, because things we do kind of complement one another.
Right.
Well, not kind of. They do complement one another.
Yeah.
You know, the singing and the piano and the pastoring and the administrative and all, you know, just those simple things complement one another. And we find that throughout our marriage.
Yeah.
You know.
Where couples are challenged with that, since we're here.
Yeah.
Where couples may be challenged with that. Maybe they don't see the compliment.
Yeah.
How can they see the compliment?
Yeah, well, I believe that's the way God orders things. Amen. And so we're never in competition with one another. You know, we are always seeking to complement one another. There's seasons where the compliment, you know, I'm supporting what she's doing. There's seasons where she's supporting what I'm doing. And so we're never in competition and always compliment one another. So, you know, if she has a teaching ministry, you know, I'm supporting, helping her do, you know, giving her information, whatever she needs for her to be successful in her teaching ministry, whether she's leading praise and worship, I'm behind the scenes playing the piano, whatever is happening, we look for ways on how we can support one another. And also, whatever we do, we figure out ways where the other one can participate in what it is that we're doing. Not because we feel like we have to, but it's my joy. Amen. You know, I want my wife around. I'm not looking for ways I can get away from my wife. I'm looking for ways in which we can grow together and mature together and build together, as opposed to trying to build something outside of her.
And so would that be a recommendation that you would provide to couples that are in ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in a complementarian style of leadership anyway. I believe that God has made us different. And I think that she doesn't need to try to do what I do, and I don't have to try to do what she does. God, in his infinite wisdom, the apostolic genius, has given her a set of gifts that I need to be successful, and God has given me a set of gifts that she need in order for her to be successful. And I think we complement one another, and we're not in competition. That's a big thing. I see a lot of husbands and wives, and when I sit down with them, whether it's in ministry or just in life, they're competing with one another. There's no need to compete. Complement one another.
And so in that, I'm sorry.
No,
in that, you always find yourself trying to make sure that the best is brought out of your husband or your wife. And so instead of, I hear sometimes you hear your mom talking about your dad gets up to preach and she's sitting there and she's sweating so hard they should have given her the offering. It's because she's pushing for the best, and that's how you feel. You know, you're pushing. You always want the best, and always want him to be the best, and so you working behind the scenes to make sure his best foot is so just and in that God gets the glory. So it's not just about them shining, but it's about God shining, God being glorified.
Can you give an example of a challenge in your marriage? How did God use that challenge to strengthen you in that marriage?
I would say that our biggest challenges outside of those first 7 years have been the last few years in raising teenagers. That's been our biggest challenge. Would you agree?
I would agree.
All right.
I was thinking of something else first, but I think you're the winner. You got it.
Raising those teenagers has been a challenge, and watching them make decisions. Not all the decisions have been bad, but watching them make some bad decisions, and then observing the consequence of those decisions and trying to figure out how we can help them through that. And then we don't always agree on what's the best method to help them through that challenge that they're having. To me, when it comes down to the boys, I like to be the main one that's dealing with the boys, you know, because I'm a father, I'm a man, and sometimes she's a mother.
Sometimes.
She's a mother. Well, all the time she's a mother, but mothers think differently than fathers think. And so, and just because we're Christians does not erase the fact of the diversity in how a father deals with his child, in particular his sons, and the way a mother deals with her sons. Would you say something? What do you think?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
So we were talking about the children challenges and how that has been a strength. How that has strengthened your marriage. Challenges. Count it all joy.
Yeah, okay.
Count it all joy. So can we transition to another part of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So how can a marriage thrive during difficult times? So we say count it all joy. But when you're facing some difficulties or some challenges in your marriage, whatever those issues or challenges might be, how do you continue to thrive?
Yeah, I think that our view of love is such a distorted view of love anyway. You know, we say we love our dog and we love our wives. You know, we say we love Cheerios and we love our children. All right. Obviously, those things are not the same thing. And so I think that having a biblical concept of love, and not just starting in the New Testament, but starting in the Old Testament, you know. One example, there's a Hebrew word. Let me give you the Hebrew word. It's a Hebrew word called ahava. And that is like the deepest kind of love or experience of love that the Old Testament speaks of. And I had the privilege of seeing that once with my grandparents. I haven't seen it often, but I saw it with them one day. And God made me so aware that this is coming for you as y'all continue to grow and mature. But my grandfather, this is like 2 weeks before he passed, and he was sick with cancer. And I remember we were sitting down, my grandmother was trying to force him to eat, to put some weight on him. And he ate his food, and then he got sick, you know. And when he got sick, my grandmother ran to the back. She grabbed me a towel, and we just started cleaning him up. She didn't make a big to-do about it. She made sure that his manhood was still intact. He was still the patriarch of the family. So with great respect and dignity and great concern for him to make sure he didn't get embarrassed by that moment, the God spoke to me very clearly, like this is ahava. This is real love that doesn't think twice about cleaning up the dirty parts of you, that covers, all right? That's ahava. First of all, I think we need to migrate from just that eros kind of love, and even storge, which is a family love where you give value and that whole bit to a particular individual, to just like, no matter what, I love you, I'm gonna cover you, I'm gonna take care of you. That's the kind of love that I think helps you to endure the difficulties. And so I think that's what we have been growing into. I have not reached my grandparents' level yet, but having that visual 10 years ago has brought about a quest in me for us to experience that one day, someday, to actually live out what Bob Whitaker said that day. Yeah, you don't love each other now, but you will one day. He was speaking of that ahava love, where that no matter what, I am committed to, kind of like agape. No matter what, I'm making a decision. I'm going to love you, and I'm going to cover you, and I'm going to be there for you. And even though this is a difficult season right now, hey, we going through this together. We're not thinking about separating. We may argue about some things or disagree, but guess what? At the end of the day, me and you gonna walk up those stairs, and we're gonna climb in that bed together, right? And not back to back, but face to face. Amen. You gonna say something?
But the only thing I was thinking about, sometimes in those difficult moments, when some challenges do arise, sometimes I have to still myself at the beginning. Just still myself, and then just remind myself that God is still with me.
Amen.
Yeah.
And good or bad or indifferent, God is still with me. And sometimes I'll have to then just, remind myself of some of the promises of God, or listen to some praise songs or whatever, where I'm just recalling what God has already said, or recalling some of the good time. Maybe if it's a moment between me and Lee, that in a challenging moment, just remind us that, what, God has brought us this far.
Amen.
Yeah.
And He's not going to bring us this far just to leave us. I remember when I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son.
Yeah.
And we went to the doctor, and the doctor gave us, some unfavorable news, and then he strongly recommended that we terminate that pregnancy. And Lee then we told the doctor, absolutely not. But then Lee said to me, God doesn't trick us like that. He doesn't play games with us like that. And so I have to remind ourselves sometimes, even though it's difficult times, God doesn't play with us. He doesn't trick us like that. Wow. He doesn't, he loves us. Amen. And he's with us through all Amen. Of it. No matter what it is, he's with us through all of it. And so I have to sometimes just still myself and just be reminded, Amen. That God is still faithful. He's still good. And he's always going to be always faithful, and always going to be good. So no matter what.
Amen.
And he's with us.
And
Amen.
he's with us.
Amen.
He's with us. And that if we were to make a statement about our marriage, in terms of the integrity of the marriage, in terms of the success of the marriage, I would have to say that the reason why we've been able to thrive is because God has been with us.
That's right. He's been
through
faithful.
the good, through the bad, through the storm, through the rain. God has been with us. The narrative she just expressed about my youngest son, when we were not told, but strongly encouraged to terminate that pregnancy. And God just showed himself mighty through that whole scenario where today, that boy just turned 18 last month. Wow. I could not imagine life without him. Just could not imagine. Exactly. And then we didn't expect him. I think she was like 4 months pregnant before we even found out she was pregnant. We weren't expecting that boy. So he was like a bonus child to us. Amen. And that's the way I see him. That man, we pray for other kids, but this joker, this is like God just gave us this extra one.
And he reminds us of that.
Yeah.
When the challenging moments come, he reminds us of that. Yeah, it's a challenging time, but it reminds us.
Yeah. This is your bonus.
It's your bonus.
This is your bonus. Mm-hmm. With him and just with life in general, we are a bonus to one another. I think God reminds me of that as well. That this is your bonus. I blessed you with her. And it brings you hope, brings you peace, it calms your spirit. Mm-hmm. You just got to know it's a God thing, that God is with you, that God is in the midst of it. And one of the things I like to tell our congregation when we pray during our time of prayer after the sermon is that it's going to be okay.
Amen.
It's going to be okay. It don't mean everything is going to work out the way you want it to,
right.
But everything is going to work out according to the counsel of God's will.
Amen.
And we can trust his providence, and we can trust his sovereignty.
And there's a song from when we were children. My soul looks back and wonders.
Yeah.
How I got over it. And many days our soul just looks back and wonders, say, man, God, you did it again.
Yeah.
You've been there. Vicky always said, you've been faithful. You've been there all along.
Oh, wow. You brought us through.
Brought us through.
And we can sing of God's faithfulness throughout the 30 years of this marriage because he has been good.
Amen.
Been good to us.
Amen. You're saying so many things in terms of the importance of keeping perspective. Mm-hmm. Even when times get challenging.
Right.
To still count it all joy.
Yeah.
What prevents couples from problem solving or working together in marriages at times?
Right. I think one of the things that prevents it is everybody wasn't brought up in a home where they had a mother and a father where they were able to see the dynamics of how that works in the context of a family. So you take a young man or a young woman that did not come from a dual family household, and you team them with someone, you already got the mingling of souls because of the dynamics of two individuals coming together. That can be very challenging. Mm-hmm. But that does not mean they won't be successful. It just means that there's some challenges there. Mm-hmm. So I think that as long as individuals are open to older saints, that they connect with other older married couples, and be open to recommendations, suggestions, conversations, and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I think they can be okay. I think that marriage can thrive and can survive. But if you don't have the context of family life, it's very difficult to create what you've never seen. It's very difficult to create that. And when we have marriage counseling, we tell people that it's hard to create what you've never seen. So we champion connecting with other married couples.
Absolutely.
So you can get some sense of how the dynamics of a man and a woman coming together in the context of a marriage, how that really works.
So many times we encourage people to have premarital counseling, but I think just as important as the premarital counseling, or maybe even more so important, is the walking along the way after you've gotten married.
Yeah.
And so I had Aunt Ann was very vital and very important in our marriage, and she's been there all my life, I guess, as well. And she's very unassuming. She's not one that's going to push herself forward and none of that. But she would drop little nuggets along the way, and so I would teach, just practical teaching and just respecting your husband, the way you speak to him and the way you dress and the way you do things in the bedroom even, and not holding anything, holding hostage, and all of those practical teachings that she taught along the way were important to the success of our marriage. And so I would say that not just the premarital counseling, but having someone that's going to walk along beside you, teaming up with the right couples, and just accountability, and not trying to live the same life that you lived before.
Yeah.
Your single life and everything before the marriage. All of those things come into play.
In Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future."
Wow.
What are some of your hopes for the future together?
Yeah. Oh, I can answer that one. I can answer that. I tell people this. I said, my greatest joy is that one day, Carmen and I will be sitting out on the porch of our house in our rocking chairs, sipping on our lemonade, and we have our children and our grandchildren just running around us, running around the yard. And that's a joy to me. That's something that I look forward to. And so there are many narratives that lead up to that happening. Our children being successful, them marrying good people, Amen. And the result of that being having our grandchildren sitting at our feet. And so that there's a lot that goes into that happening. But to me, that's my greatest joy. It's not about the church. It's not about any of those kind of things. One day I'm not going to be preaching at that church. There's going to be another person there, and in a few years they'll forget that I was even there at all. And so those are not the kind of things that sorry, Impact DMV. Those are not the kinds of things that I long to see. I long to be on the porch. I don't have one here, so that means a different house. We're gonna have to move. But I long to sit on the porch with the wife of my youth, have my children and my grandchildren all around me. That's a joyous thing to me. Amen. That's what I look forward to. How about you?
That and my children falling in love with Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So that whoever believes on him shall not perish but have everlasting life. So God so loved. There were so many reasons. John couldn't recite them all. He just says God so loved. I think that's what we have now. We so love each other. We could not begin to recite all the reasons why we love one another. But that's what 30 years of marriage does for you. If you hang in there and trust God and see the beauty of God in everything, you end up 30 years later saying, we so love each other. And we cannot count all those reasons because we've had so many shared experiences that this is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. Love you, girl.
I love you.
Amazing.
Thank you. Join us next week for another episode of Compelling Conversations.